Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Detroit Regional Chamber and Mish Auto Town Hall today. We are so pleased that you could join us today and hope you are well and staying healthy. We have an awesome guest for everyone today. Gerald Johnson is the Executive Vice President, Global Manufacturing at General Motors, where, as his title implies, leads the company's global manufacturing, manufacturing engineering, as well as labor relations functions. Gerald is a direct report to GM's Chair and CEO, Mary Baruah, and serves on her senior leadership team. It's very timely that we have Gerald this afternoon as the Chamber's guest. GM and our other automotive companies have been rightfully celebrated for their impressive pivot, adapting their manufacturing power to fill the demand for urgently needed and life-saving medical equipment for our nation. And Friday, Governor Whitmer gave the official green light for our automotive companies to commence production, allowing the state's premier industry to begin the process of safely restoring vehicle manufacturing. So we have a lot to talk about. Gerald, thank you for joining us and welcome to the Chamber and Mish Auto's Town Hall.
Thanks, Sandy. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here. And yeah, it's an interesting time right now for our industry and for our company.
Well, and thank you for taking time. I know you're home today, as we all are, so we appreciate you taking time out of your schedule. First, your GM colleagues have told me that I'm not allowed to talk to you the entire time about the demise of the Cadillac CT6 Blackwing, and I'm really upset about that.
That's two of us. It was my favorite vehicle as well.
Well, good. We're off to a great start then. But let's talk about the pivot that General Motors has made to address the nation's healthcare crisis. You developed a partnership with Ventech out of the Seattle area to manufacture 30,000 ventilators. Tell us how this came about and how General Motors was able to pivot so rapidly.
Yeah, so it had a great and interesting start. It started with a simple phone call with the group to see what was possible and what would be considered. Mary Baruah asked me to join a call, and we did with the leadership from Ventech, Chris Heupel being the CEO over there. And from that conversation, 48 hours later, we were in Seattle with the North American team of engineers, shooting videos back of how their processing worked and what their product specs were. And probably the most amazing part of this journey that doesn't show up on the front is we had to go out and work with automotive suppliers to find components to make the volume of ventilators, because as you can imagine, the entire industry and value chain was used to a much slower and lower production. So fast forward 4 weeks and we're producing those ventilators in Kokomo, Indiana. We've got roughly 700 people now working pretty much around the clock producing ventilators. We've shipped over 3,000 ventilators, having ramped up now, and we're on our way to the 30,000 commitment that we made to the community and to the medical profession and to our government.
Gerald, where are you on that 30,000 march? Are you halfway there, almost there?
No, actually, we're just ramping. So as I said, we've shipped 3,000 units. And so we're still in our ramp-up phase with production there. By June, we will hit our production rate, and then June, July, August, we will produce the lion's share of the 30,000.
And you're in an unusual position to know what our nation's need for ventilators is right now. Obviously, when the crisis first broke, it was just a dire situation. Can you give us a sense of where the nation is now regarding our need for ventilators?
Sandy, as you can imagine, there's been an amount of prediction and then therefore error, if you will, or guessing to a degree based on what was happening early on when the virus was ramping up across our country. And then now, even as things tend to level off in many states like Michigan and even turn downward, I think there's still a great need. We're well ready and prepared to produce beyond the 30,000 commitment that we made between here and August. And we'll have to see. In working with Ventech, they think there's still a strong need out there beyond that 30,000, just in the back orders that they're working through their normal channels with as well. So The number's hard to peg. It's probably more than the 30,000 that we've committed to, and others have committed as well, and we'll probably keep producing well into the end of this year, I guess.
So how did General Motors go about staffing the Kokomo facility? Obviously, your UAW colleagues are idled right now because the plants are idled. How did you pick the employees, or did the employees raise their hands?
And that's just it. I'm really proud of the GM team, because everyone who's been associated with this project has volunteered to come in and commit their efforts, their time, and their work. In many cases, the stories, the personal stories of how COVID-19 has affected their families is what's motivated them to want to be a part of this ventilator project. And so we opened it up and offered that to primarily our UAW workforce in the Indiana area, so Fort Wayne, Marion, and Kokomo. And they came in, and then we went to the community as well and had people come along and agree to come aboard and work. And then, like I said, we're up to 700 now, folks out there working, and it's an amazing transformation before and after.
Well, I think all of us who are part of the automotive community, or part of the Michigan community, we just couldn't be more proud of General Motors and the incredible, important work that you all have done to really save lives across the country. I mean, it really is special.
And that was the call. We realized every ventilator was a life, maybe even a couple of lives if they get well utilized. So it was really urgent, really important. And again, I can't stress enough how important it was for our supply base to convert their processes as well to begin producing parts for ventilator production to allow us to get where we are.
That's a great way of looking at it. Every ventilator is a life. What a powerful message. Now, it wasn't just ventilators that our country was scrambling for when the COVID crisis hit. What about other kinds of PPE? Did General Motors engage in any of that?
Absolutely. So we have in our Warren facility a production process now with 3 lines producing face masks. Producing primarily the surgical face mask, what we call level 1, but also we added a line to produce the much needed N95 face mask, which is what medical professionals and first responders need because they're interacting constantly with people who have been exposed or in fact confirmed COVID cases. We're doing face shields as well to help, again, primarily first responders, again, who have to protect themselves, but we also have medical professionals in all of our facilities, or most of our facilities, that also need these PPE that we're producing. And we didn't want to take away from the capacity that is out. We wanted to make sure we are adding to that capacity. And so across North America, we've donated over 1 million face masks to medical professionals, police departments, fire departments across Michigan.
Well, I'm sure when you took the role leading global manufacturing for General Motors, ventilators and face masks were probably not in your job description.
Not at all. It's one of those things you wake up and say, I wasn't thinking about this when I went to bed last night, but here we are.
So you said something really interesting just a second ago, Gerald, that General Motors was prepared to go beyond the 30,000 bogey that you had signed on to with Ventech. Has there been any consideration given in General Motors to making medical devices kind of an interesting side business of General Motors going forward after the crisis passed?
Not our real expertise. We were glad to come alongside to help fill a need for the country, and partnering with Ventech, who produces an outstanding ventilator product, actually 2, an upscale and a lower scale product. And we just wanted to bring our manufacturing capability, our supply-based capability, and help them actually magnify their production by 10x so that we could serve a need. We didn't have an intent, nor do we. We're not making any money off these ventilators. Don't plan to. We want to be able to turn this over to Ventech at some point and let them continue to run their business.
Great, that's wonderful. So speaking of manufacturing, your primary job, manufacturing finally assembled vehicles, you just got the green light from Governor Whitmer to begin that in Michigan. What kinds of steps have you needed to take to prepare your manufacturing facilities to operate in this very new, very different environment?
Sure. So in collaboration with Governor Whitmer and his office and other industrials in the area, Michigan Economic Recovery Council, we wanted to build a robust safety protocol. And so working with the UAW, again, working with people in the industry, working with the CDC and WHO, we spent the last few weeks doing just that. And in addition, in our ventilator production site in Kokomo, our mass production site in Warren, and construction activity that we've continued in Detroit Hamtramck and also in Arlington, we wanted to have those safety protocols in place for them to do their work. We didn't want people to come build ventilators for someone else and end up on a ventilator. So protocol was important for the workforce that we were employing to do this essential task and assignment. So these protocols, which we actually have to admit, we're global. My organization is global. And so we had learnings from China, who experienced COVID-19 ahead of us. We had learnings from our manufacturing team in South Korea. And then we took those learnings along with the collaboration from others outside of General Motors to build a protocol aimed at keeping the virus out of our facilities, and in the case where it comes in, keeping the virus from being able to be transmitted inside our facility. And then lastly, having our response in place so that we knew what to do should we find someone symptomatic in our facilities or coming or trying to get into our facilities through our screening process. So those were the three goals as we built our safety protocols. And our confidence is, and since we've done that, we've had no transmission of the virus inside of our facilities. Not in China, not in South Korea, not here in North America.
Well, that's an incredible learning, and maybe expand on that just a bit, Gerald. What did General Motors learn from your experience in China? Because obviously the virus originated in China. They're several months ahead of what we're experiencing here in the United States. What are some of the key things General Motors learned in China that we need to be thinking about here in the United States as we go through this COVID crisis?
Well, first of all, the primary defense from contaminating and from transmitting is the mask. And so from the very beginning, our protocol was going to include the requirement of a mask in our facilities. And while you can social distance and physical distance, and we are executing to the best of our ability that, the reality is through interaction, through coincidental, and in some cases just because of the way the job assignments are carried out, we needed to know that we're going to still be safe when that 6-foot barrier couldn't be maintained. So for example, when we're in Kokomo and some of the components inside of a ventilator are very small, almost microscopic, and to help an employee work through a problem, you are going to infringe upon that 6-foot barrier just to help solve a problem. And so a face mask is what we learned was critical. And we learned that in China and South Korea. It was part of the baseline protocols we put in place there, along with safety glasses and or face shields. We require safety glasses in all our facilities already. So that was a part of the protocol. But the most important piece is making sure everyone understood them. So you had to have the visuals and you had to do the training and the education. And so we spent the better part of this week, and we'll spend the front end of our startup week helping everyone understand what the protocols are, why they're necessary, and what they should do in case of.
You know, I think this this knowledge that you have not had any transmission in your Chinese or other overseas plants it is really confidence building for those of us here in Michigan who are watching our manufacturing-based startups. So that's wonderful to hear. Now, your job in General Motors, you sit atop of this incredibly complex, incredibly large global supply chain. Talk to us about the support that you are giving and the support that is needed by your supply base to get the supply base up and running, because you aren't able to produce, you know, a Tahoe or a CT5 without parts from your suppliers.
So from the beginning, we knew we were all in this together. So you're right. We can't move forward without our supply base. And again, kudos to our supply base in collaborating with us. So we've shared our protocol with the supply base from the beginning, and we've taken on their input as well to round out a safety protocol that we think is confident and can be implemented across the value chain. We've also interacted with our suppliers on an ongoing basis to assure that their understanding and the whys and what must be done in order to protect their workforce and ultimately protect the whole value chain. And I'll also have to say this for the other U.S. OEMs. From the beginning, we also decided this was not a point of competition, but rather a point of collaboration. And so we work hand in hand with Ford and with FCA to make sure we're learning and sharing our learnings across the industry because all of us care about life and safety and the well-being of our employees and our communities. And so that was also helpful in making sure, again, the whole value chain, because Ford suppliers generally are also our suppliers and vice versa. And so again, it was all one network needed to raise their performance and understanding infectious disease and how to protect ourselves against COVID-19 specifically.
Yeah, it really is a cliche, but it really is true. We truly are all in this together, and it's nice to see that our automotive companies have really adopted that. Let's shift gears, no pun intended, to products for a moment here. General Motors has several high-profile product launches in the pipeline. I know dealers, and I personally know customers who are eagerly awaiting the new C8 Corvette. I think you had to delay the official launch of the new Escalade. What has the COVID crisis done to General Motors' launch cadence?
Yeah, and so obviously we've had to look closely at our launches, but you mentioned the Escalade and our large SUVs that we built in Arlington. Actually, the down period that we had would have been a planned down period, as it were, for us to convert the plan over. Now, again, it's been adjusted week for week with COVID-19 and being able to restart. But that said, that same window of time was used to convert the plant. So we're on track to launch our large SUVs. And in fact, this week, they're already starting to what we call system fill, bringing components and starting up our body shop, paint shop, et cetera, to be ready to initiate a full production throughout this week and next week. And in the case of the Corvette, of course, it had to stop production. And yes, we have orders and everyone waiting for them. And so we're excited to get the Corvette started back up as well. But again, we'll just pick right up where we left off there. We did launch the Corvette, so it's now no longer in a launch mode. So it's just like any one of our other facilities, it's ready to produce as soon as we're ready to start back up. And they will also start up next week with the rest of our footprint. In terms of investment for long term, we are still committed to our EV portfolio that we've been sharing with the public here, largely over time, but specifically this year. And we're excited that, frankly, that we've been able to stay on course with those programs and continue to engineer, design, and plan for those launches yet to come in the future. So our short-term launches, they're intact. They'll move line for line with the startup from our shutdown period. But more importantly, our long-term and our commitment to an all-EV future is not interrupted at all. In fact, we're even more committed.
So I want to come back to the EV question in just a second, but going back to the product launches, obviously, once you start production in the next few days here, it's not like flipping a switch. You're going to have to start up relatively slowly. Demand for things like the new Suburban and the new Denali are going to be huge, and I'm sure you've got a pent-up book of business. How long do you think it's going to take to fill that gap that has been generated because of the COVID crisis for some of these very popular vehicles?
Once we get through our safety protocol gates, we're starting up in a phased and limited way to make sure our protocols stay whole and disciplined as we continue to ramp up and add people to our production operations. Once we get past that, of course, then demand will determine what volumes that we run at. We are highly confident in our pickup trucks and our large SUVs. We expect that demand to come back strongly. We expect that to be a strong demand for the balance of this year. That's about all that I can foresee that we'll be running full out for the balance of this year once we again are sure that our protocols are understood and well executed as we ramp back up to full production. So I expect the market to be very resilient. We expect the market to be very resilient and to pick right up with our new programs, in particular our large SUVs.
Just one last question, Gerald, before I turn it over to my friend and colleague, Glenn Stevens of Mish Auto. And this is going back to the EV question. General Motors has been very clear about its electric future. Your leadership, yourself, you've been out front saying that our future is going to be electric. The COVID crisis, though, has obviously, thrown everyone's plans up in the air. But I think what makes it especially difficult for companies like General Motors is that we have seen this crisis coupled with the bottom falling out of oil prices, which I think will certainly help you on the large SUV side. But what does that do to demand for electric vehicles?
Well, there are a lot of variables that are result in price of oil going down. Most of them, I think, are short term, in that once we're back to full production and once the global economy has stabilized post COVID-19, that we would expect to see oil return to its prior levels of pricing. That said, there are more reasons to go there than simply the price of oil. And so we're committed to EV because our mission is 0, 0, 0, zero crashes, zero emissions, and zero congestion. Zero emissions, our best attack for our industry is to go into and be committed to an EV future, and then work down the technology curve as we will with any new technology as we go forward. And the volume and the learnings that we get from going there will help us get down that curve faster. So we're still excited and still very committed. Everyone had to make decisions, I'm sure, about how they make use of capital in this time where liquidity was a pinch, but we did not back away from our EV commitments at all. We are still on track and still moving forward with commitments to an all EV future and the rollout and launch plans that we've laid out for this decade.
Great, I appreciate that. So let me turn it over to Glenn Stevens of Mish Auto, who's been monitoring our chat room with some questions from our audience. Glenn, the floor is yours.
Gerald, thanks again. How are you? Appreciate your time today. Can you hear me okay?
Hear you perfectly.
Okay, great. Well, we have a lot of questions, so I'm kind of trying to sort through them here. They've been flowing in, but yesterday I had the opportunity to sit through your internal webinar on the safety protocol. Some of your communications people invited me, and frankly, I'm going to say I was very impressed at what I saw. But there are, to pick up on a lot of the people's questions online here, you've got some suppliers that have asked questions today, and just some other people. How do they learn more about your protocol, as much as you can share publicly? Where do they go to find that out?
So you can go to gm.com. Our playbook is available. And in fact, if you're a supplier of General Motors directly through our purchasing team, we've made the playbook also available. But gm.com, our safety protocols and playbooks are available.
Good. I just wanted to reiterate that to everybody online. And as you and Sandy talked, everybody has shared it. We've been working with the Lear playbook and the Magna playbook and now the GM playbook. So thank you for that. We have some very, very specific questions that I won't get into today, but we'll follow up with the people so they have that information. And you did start this week, correct? There are, I think, some of the plants came up yesterday, some of the supplier plants, I think one in New York. How did that go?
Sure. Actually, we had a fantastic start yesterday. Our parts service facilities, our customer care and after sale, as we call them, CC&A, they started up full on this past Monday, and it was a great startup. Of course, we took the time early on to walk everyone through the protocol, execute the training, answer all questions before we assumed and began to start production and to start work there. But we had roughly an 85% attendance rate of those that were expected to return to work, which is fantastic. In a few cases, the short time frame by which we were able to communicate probably created some of the concern in a few locations, but all in all, a very good start, good feedback from our workforce that came back into a very different environment and a very visual and obvious new protocol for safety and care for their well-being. So it has gone very well. We've also started some of our component sites up that are going to help support the start of the assembly plants next week, and they've done very well as well.
Okay, we did. And speaking of other plants, you touched on it earlier. We did have a question about China, and you touched on it. How is manufacturing going in China overall for you right now?
Well, not too differently. They went through a similar phase and limited start. Then they were paced by demand once we had all of our facilities up and running, albeit in our terminology on a one-shift kind of basis. But the market is returning very quickly in China, and our volumes are going up very quickly in April, end of April, early May. Are good signs. So they continue to ramp up to full volume, but all of our facilities are up and running in China.
Okay. We had a question to flip back to the Ventech partnership. Obviously, GM has partnerships and JVs around the world. Specific to that, did you learn anything from them? And I'm sure they learned some things from you. There's got to be some exchange of information and manufacturing and technology ideas and some synergy that's coming out of this too. I don't know if you could comment on that.
Yeah, there's a couple things that I'd point to right away. Because of the criticality of what they do and how important it is for the ventilator to function properly, the amount of testing that they do throughout their production processing was enlightening for us. And we wanted to take some of the learnings that we saw there. The other thing that I would acknowledge that we learned in working with our supply base and Ventech is how quickly, if you're willing to be open in your collaboration, things can move along in a launch that you would not have otherwise assumed to move as fast and as quickly as they did. We did this from phone call to production in less than 4 weeks. That's incredible. Chris Heipel, the CEO, when he showed up in Kokomo to see the facility once it was productionized, his words, "This is nothing short of a miracle." So we learned speed, and then we learned some things about testing that we want to look at and how they might apply in our own operations of launch.
Yeah, that's great. I got a couple big picture questions for you, and one, I'll follow up on that one. We've seen, and you know this, you grew up in this industry, an incredible mobilization, not just of the companies, but of the spirit of innovation and can do. That's something that we know in Detroit and Michigan in our industry, but that's something that a lot of other people have been able to see now because of this experience too, don't you think?
I think it's true, and I think it's embedded in our culture as a country. We rise to occasions, we rise to challenge, we unite to solve problems where when we feel, if you will, I'll use the word under attack, in this case by an infectious disease. And we've seen that, of course, in our own workforce and in our communities. The help we had people from the community helping us deliver face masks to hospitals and to fire departments. Everyone was pitching in, so you could be more proud of the workforce, the UAW, the communities. Yeah, out of this, one of the beautiful things is how well we can work together and unite and collaborate when we deem it necessary.
Another question kind of along those lines is there's been a lot of talk about onshoring or reshoring, and whether it's for medical equipment or other things. Do you see an opportunity for our state and our country to be able to make more and do more as we innovate and do new things and new technologies that coming out of this?
I think it will cause some to rethink the manufacturing base of our country and how important it is and how necessary it is to be able to respond to things that are yet unforeseen even. So the ability, and quite frankly, Ventech would say it as well, and quiet as it's kept, we helped another ventilator supplier come online as well. Hamilton in Reno, Nevada, started up their production process just this past week. As well, and we worked with them to productionize and bring equipment on board and to help them identify the supply base necessary. And so the capability that we've been able to put to use in General Motors, and I'm sure other manufacturers around the country, I think is a signal of the importance of that capability and the need for it to be here on shore where we can flex it as we have need. So I think it will cause people to rethink.
Absolutely, and everybody knows it's a global industry, and you make where you serve the markets, but some would say there's some opportunity too. A specific question, just a couple more. You touched on working with your supply base and General Motors purchasing and supply chain, but I don't think people know kind of the magnitude of what it took from a number of components. Somebody asked if you could elaborate on that.
Sure.
How, some details on the come together.
Sure, it's a great question because again, I think it's the untold side of this story. So in the production of a Ventech ventilator, their up model, especially there's 726 part numbers. 50% of those we had to find a new supplier for.
Wow.
50% of those part numbers had to go into the automotive supply base, and an automotive supplier raised their hand and said, I think we can convert this process over to make that part for you. And they did it in a matter of a weekend. We got the part list on the Friday. By Sunday, 98% of that part list had been sourced across the supply base. It was phenomenal.
Yeah, it really was. And thank you for elaborating on that. Let's finish with a question here about people. Obviously, that's what it's all about, our employees, the people that build, design, engineer, manufacturing things. I know you're involved, have been with Focus Hope for a long time. Where do you see our workforce kind of evolving from a skill set standpoint and an opportunity? You're a manufacturing guy. We work with SME. There's going to be opportunity for people to make things and build things and engineer things moving forward. And the Ventech situation and the new products that General Motors are rolling out, those are great examples of what can be done and what careers or opportunities. Some thoughts on that?
Sure, and these, by the way, I don't think are changed any by COVID-19, pre or post. Right. I think COVID-19, to your earlier question, may have exposed an opportunity for us to build and strengthen an area of our country's economy. That said, the technical skill sets to bring about an electrical and all EV future, it's a whole nother set of skills that are not germane or not necessarily transferable in and of themselves from the automotive industry as it has been. Now, mind you, it's a migration, so we still will have need for internal combustion engines and engineers that understand those kind of propulsion systems. But we have a growing need for those who understand better battery technology, lithium ion, and other ways to process and package a battery to enable drive motors, and then the whole digitization of not just our world, but even our vehicles and how they connect. All these are opportunities that existed before COVID-19 and will continue to exist and provide a great opportunity for those who are interested in innovating for a different industry to participate and come alongside. Now, I always in that conversation with my team and say, and guess what? At the end of the day, we will still build it. And so there's still a need for a good processing engineering capability, industrial engineering capability, leadership capability to be able to synergize the activities of 30 team members while they figure out how to produce and solve the problems that occur while you're trying to produce. All these are skills that make manufacturing outstanding and interesting, and has always kept my interest as a result. People I don't think really appreciate the speed, the pace, the energy, the innovation that it takes to do what we do. But I welcome to come along and come see. It's a great ride.
Well, thank you for that. And again, we'll follow up with some of these other specific questions with you and your team. But I'm going to turn it back over to Sandy now to bring him back on. But Gerald, thank you very much for your time today. We really appreciate it. And thanks for what you've done to support the country in this time of need. And we look forward to those new vehicles coming off the lines again soon.
Look forward to it.
Well, Gerald, I think Glenn wrapped it up really, really well. We are so appreciative of your time. We're so appreciative and so proud of the work that General Motors has done. I'm so glad we had this time together to talk about what General Motors has done, how quickly and efficiently they've done it to provide these needed pieces of medical equipment to save lives across the country. And I'm also so glad that we were able to resolve finally the CT6 question. So thank you for that as well.
Appreciate that, Sandy. And yeah, no question. You and I are probably in agreement around that. And there are a lot of happy people driving CT6s right now. Thank you guys for the opportunity. I tell you, there's nothing more important. And we have to do not one thing or the other, but two things: protect lives and protect livelihood. And that's the fine line we walk through. And the protocols that we've developed and that the industry is developing enable us, in my opinion, to have confidence that we can do both. But you can't shirk one over for sake of the other. You have to do both. Live the protocols and then we can also return to the livelihoods that we're all familiar with and thankful for. Thanks for the time.
Yeah, and we couldn't be happier that General Motors is going to be up and running again, producing their great products. So, Gerald, thank you. Our best to you and your family. Stay safe. I hope your associates continue to stay safe, and we look forward to talking to you soon. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Everyone, thank you for joining us. We'll see you soon, and I hope everyone stays safe and stays home as directed. So be well and take care. Thank you all.